Hey everyone, Solarbrunk Steve here. Today, I want to share with you exactly how I built my first solar-powered lawn care trailer.
And test out the system, make sure it works.
I've been using this to help fuel my all-electric lawn care business, as well as my ego. Now, this can look a little scary in 3 dimensions, so before we get into the actual build process and some of the challenges I had screwing this together, I want to take just a few moments to flatten everything out so it's not so scary, kind of like a spider. This way, we can easily see how everything is connected up together.
I find it fascinating that this punk's been loitering up here every day for over 4 billion years, and it's only in the last 69 or so that we've been able to do anything about it. So to get back at him for all the times he's burned me, I took 6 of these 200 watt, 24 volt rich solar panels and connected them up in series. I put 24 volts in quotations here because these panels actually produce quite a bit more. When they're connected to something producing power, it's 37.6 volts. And then when they're not connected to anything, just open circuit, that's 45.4 volts. And when we're wiring things in series here, the voltages add up. So open circuit, we get 272.4 volts total. And then if you connect it to a load like lawn care, represented by a green squiggly line, you get 225.6 volts DC. This is important because we want to connect it to our EG4 3000 EHV-48, which has a voltage funnel of max 500 volts open circuit and 120 volts minimum. Our 6-panel array lands somewhere around here at 225.6 volts. Current in a series connected system does not add, so it actually stays at 5.32 amps total under normal conditions. Okay, cool. Let's start building our 2D trailer. Bring the wiring around and connect up to a fuse. I ended up using an MC4 style inline 10 amp fuse. I also need to be able to disconnect the system safely, so I'm using an appropriate DC rated cutoff switch. To store all these red and black arrows, I'm using the EG4 5 kilowatt hour server rack battery, and they included 4 gauge battery cables I got from Signature Solar. The manual for the inverter calls for a 30 amp breaker on the output. I wanted 2 20 amp circuits in the trailer, just in case I wanted to power heavier duty equipment. Coupled to 20 amp GFCI outlets to handle the potentially wet environment. Trying to hold the door open. Woo. 4 of the smaller Ego battery chargers are connected to one outlet, and the Z6 mower charger is connected to the other one. If I need to top up the onboard battery in case I haven't gotten enough solar, I can plug it into the house, which is the only time it's actually connected to the earth through the grounding rod on the house. However, everything still is grounded, or more accurately bonded together. The casing of the battery, the enclosure of the inverter, and the rack of the solar panels are all connected to the metal frame of the trailer and thereby each other as well. Okay, great. That's all the boring safety stuff out of the way. Let's put it back in 3D. All this work was to try and give the inverter a place to mount that was non-flammable and also isolated it from any road vibrations. That felt a little bit silly here after I gave it the largest vibration it will ever see in its lifetime. There we go. That's not going anywhere. Pro tip, keep a Scully scrap pile on hand for future projects. Same thinking with the battery here. I wanted to keep it isolated from road vibrations, but also mount it really securely. So I came up with this kind of foam / strap method, and this actually works really well, but I just hate the look of it. So after driving around for a couple days with it, I tore it all back out, and started over from scratch. That's actually why you see some of the things done around the battery, like the conduit. I'm just skipping ahead a little bit so you can see exactly how the battery goes in. I'll get back to the electrical in just a second. These are those little rubber stoppers you buy to put on the back of your enclosed trailer doors. They work really well to mount a battery. And this is some cheap neoprene foam that attaches really easily with staples. This is already looking a lot better in my opinion, but I still need to secure it to the trailer, so I'm going to use a couple pieces of angle iron that came with the lawnmower in its crate when I bought it from Lowe's. I can't even begin to tell you how nice it is having a chop saw for metal projects like this. I've done so many without it, it's miserable.
Really?
Yes, really. What I'm doing here is a little over the top with neoprene foam on the inside of the angle brackets, and then custom making a strap cut specifically to the length to tune this battery into the trailer. There's nothing worse than shifty batteries, so a couple blocks should keep that from happening, knock on wood. These are the 4-gauge pre-made battery cables that came with the inverter and battery when I bought it from Signature Solar. I thought I might have to move everything, and I didn't have the proper crimp tool to remake them at the right size, so I kind of just tucked them up out of the way for now. Also included was the communication cable between the battery and inverter. Alright, let's see if everything still works. Battery's at 97%. That was pretty. Sigh of relief knowing this inverter still works after I gave it the shock of its lifetime. And yes, puns are always intended here. I went back and forth on using conduit or this outdoor 10-gauge generator cable for the 30 amp part of my circuit. And I eventually settled on using both because the ground wire actually has to come back outside of the inverter enclosure to mount on a bolt with this ring terminal here. You'll see in just a second. Also, always check your connections to make sure they're nice and sturdy. This is what I mean here. You have to be able to pull this grounding cable out of the enclosure to get to the bottom of the inverter where the grounding lug is. Because it's used in a mobile application, it's more of a bond because we can't actually connect to the earth. These are the cables for the 120 volt output of the inverter. Black one is hot or line, and then the white is neutral. I didn't want a big breaker box that typically handles 240 volt and just have to use half of it. So I got this enclosure that could handle a single 30 amp breaker, which means that the way I have it installed right now, the hot, the black wire, and the neutral, the white one, will be shut off if the breaker trips. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I don't think it's necessary either. So hopefully one of those internet experts will come in and let me know all the things I'm doing wrong so that I can fix it. But seriously though, I do want to be safe and I want others to be safe too. So if you know a better way to do these types of things, please let me know in the comments. I'll pin it to the top and I'll apply that in my future installs. This is the 10-gauge 3-wire SOOW stuff you can find at the big box stores sold by the foot. I could have switched to conduit for this part of the install, but I already had the wire and I kind of wanted it to sit a little bit more flush on the wall of the trailer, since I have tools that need to hang here and the conduit sticks out a little bit more. But anyway, wiring up here, neutral going in, and then I'm going to do two 20 amp breakers and switch over to conduit to confuse you. I've seen some people go to one terminal and then just jumper over to the next. The problem is these terminals aren't rated for 2 conductors. What I found is these little Wago 221s, which are rated to 41 amps at 450 volts. 20 to 10 gauge wire should be perfectly fine using 30 amp 10 gauge on here. And I'll go into the middle one. So yeah, there we go. This breaker box did not come with a ground terminal. Went with two 20 amp breakers. Of course 30 amps over the main line. And if both of these together are pulling more than 30, I still have the safety of the 30 amp breaker for the whole circuit, which would trip. Maybe even before the inverter would. Alright, time to get the outlet circuits wired up. Little bit of mix and match here with flexible conduit for the rest of the circuits with 12 gauge solid copper wiring instead of the generator cable that we used earlier. I do think it's important here to use flexible conduit rather than the metal conduit, because if you use metal, the road vibrations might be able to wear through some of your wires. That's just my thinking here on this, but maybe we can hear from some of those internet experts again. Here, I'm just getting the mower charger and the solar disconnect switch placed so that I can figure out where I want the outlet to go. Try and get one of those started. Cool. Let's do the inverter. Nothing blew up. That's good.
Need to push the button?
Yay! Yay! We get to move on to installing solar panels. Yes! I need to drill through the beams in the roof to mount them, and unfortunately this one is toast. So let's repair that one first. A little bit of OSFO to kill all the rust. And then I need to patch the roof, but I don't know where the leak is, so I'm just going to use a bunch of this roof tape and cover the whole section with it. These beams are just full of rust holes, so reinforcing it with some angle iron. This is the low-profile super strut that I grabbed from one of the big box stores. I got 3 10-foot sections, so I cut one in half, since I have a 14-foot long trailer, and I laid everything out so I can figure out where to drill my holes for the mounts. And I drilled a hole in the front and the back, and then marked all of this up so I can get a good line all the way down the trailer. A couple pilot holes and then just widen them out. The other side went quite a bit faster. Speaking of faster, there's a trick I learned from this old Tony. You can set your equipment to the number of things that you need. So here, I just set the saw to 14. I made these spacers to keep the thin metal roof from collapsing into this open section of the H-channel roof crossbars. These little guys are super satisfying. They are metal roof base mounts from Snap and Rack. They have a rubber seal on the bottom, so you put the bolt through, tighten that down, and then there's a rubber seal on the inside of the cap that screws on top, and then you can mount rails or solar panel mounts on top of that. I had planned on just bolting the super strut directly to the roof of the trailer and sealing it up, but check out how warped the metal is on this 17-year-old trailer. So that wasn't going to work, which is why I ended up going with the mounts and then the rails on top of that. Even with spacing the rails up off the roof a little bit, there wasn't enough room underneath a solar panel to fit this vent, so it had to go. Doing a quick test fit here to check the super strut rails, make sure they line up okay. Tight squeeze. Before I go any further, I need to find out if 13.5 feet of solar panels will actually fit on a 14-foot long trailer. They fit! With that confirmation, I can pull everything down and cut off the excess of the super strut. At the front of the trailer here, I squeaked out 2 more holes in that front crossbar that was repaired. I won't make you watch that, the sound is just too painful. We can't forget the big hole I made in the top of the trailer by removing that vent. Seriously though, what would I do without my friend's schoolie scrap pile for this project? Just cleaning up the surface and using some butyl tape to seal up the hatch. I'm feeling pretty confident about where the rails are, so putting some blue Loctite on because I won't have access to these once the solar panels are on. Even with the seal on the bottom of these mounts, I just wanted to be sure I'd never have to deal with them in the future. I picked a spot close to the inverter at the back of the trailer for the wiring to come through the roof, and then added in a rubber grommet to keep it from chafing anything. There wasn't enough space at the back of the trailer for another mount for the rail, so I just used a piece of wood here to kind of keep the rail from bouncing, and then when you're holding a hammer, everything looks like a nail, so more white Dicor. This first panel at the front of the trailer gets the positive solar panel cable that goes all the way back to the gland through the roof to the inverter. The negative cable from that first panel gets connected to the positive cable of the next panel, and you just alternate like that, daisy chain all the way down. Here's that positive cable from the first panel, just cutting it and leaving a little bit of excess in case I need to change something later on. And using MC4 connectors, don't forget all the pieces before you make the crimp connection. These little blue wrenches are quite handy. They sort of snap when the connection is tight enough. With the solar panels wired up on the roof, I can start bolting them down to the rails, using just the standard spring nuts for the super strut, and then, of course, more Loctite with the adjustable end clamps for the solar panels, but I'm using the lowest setting since these solar panels are only about 1.4 inches tall. The standard spring nuts proved to be a little frustrating to use in the middle here, so I had to cut the spring and actually widen it a little bit so it didn't drop through the hole as I was trying to bolt everything together. I probably cut the super strut a little too short for comfort, but there was still enough metal for the end clamps to grab onto.
With help from my dad late last night, we got the panels installed on top of the trailer, and if I can finish the wiring, today would be the first day I can actually take solar with me and charge on site at the houses I'm mowing at. So I gotta try and get this done quick because I gotta go work today. Something like that. I'm thinking red because it's a little bit scarier.
Be very careful when working with solar panel wiring. It could be live. In my case, even inside a workshop, I still had 120 volts on the cables, so I had disconnected them while I was working on them.
I really would have loved to have shortened these cables, but I don't have the crimpers that I need right now. Instead, I'm just hiding it behind the mower charger.
Remember earlier when I said it's a good idea to always check your connections?
Hey, there we go. That's why you check. Turns out I went under the terminal, so I need to be in it. I wonder for it to actually clamp down on it. Much better. Look at that. It's always good practice to make sure the rest of your terminals are closed off. Keeps them from vibrating or stuff falling into them.
Solar wiring is complete. Just checking all my connections one more time, and this is an extension cord I have wired into the AC input just for the time being.
Just putting the covers back on and test out the system, make sure it works, and then I gotta go mow and charge my batteries. With sunlight, guys. Sunlight. Oops.
I didn't have footage from the original build, so I just wanted to show you quickly how I bonded everything together inside the trailer.
The AC output is bonded to the casing of the inverter, as well as the casing of the battery and the solar panel rack through this wire here, which goes behind the wall, up, and onto one of these studs, which comes through the frame of the solar panel array. And there's two nuts on here, used as a jam nut, just kind of sticking it on. Okay. Double check the voltage here. Got 120 volts DC. Got nothing because the switch is off. Right. AC input 0, PV input 120 volts. So no amperage yet. That's because I'm inside of my shop. So I need to get this all cleaned up, hook up the Tesla, pull it out, and see what it does then. Here it is, guys. All right, let's see if it's actually charging. Okay, I can hear it. Okay, input battery, 710 watts. Solar panels are at 222 volts. Battery's at 66%. That's actually not too bad. Let's put a load on it. Alright, so we just got one battery charging right now. Alright, 13% load, 300 watts. So solar's still charging battery and powering the load. Awesome. Let's go mow some yards. Everything will start charging. There we go. Looks like we're pulling in 780 watts or so of solar. Look at that thing up there doing work for me.
Some of you might have heard it at the beginning, but I did say this was the first solar-powered lawn care trailer that I built. It's not the only one. I just finished building one for a friend of mine, Adrian, over in Tampa, Florida, in a single day.
It's 1 a.m. in the morning. I cannot believe it.
I'll be dropping the video for that real soon. But if you're still watching at this point, clearly you're interested in doing something like this yourself. Either that or you're washing dishes and your hands have too much soap on them and you can't hit the skip button. If it's the former, I've got good news for you. This can seem pretty scary, kind of like a spider, but I've been working non-stop to take the scary out of it for you, to the detriment of my sleep schedule, YouTube channel, social life, and bank account. But who cares about all that? So if you have a trailer and you want to solar punk it, go to my website, solarpunkit.com. If it's not live yet, drop your email in there, punk, and you'll be the first to know when I launch this thing to the sun.